Namaste. Welcome to the third edition of the Global Festival of Oneness, organized by Advaita Academy. We will start with a prayer. Sada Shiva Samarambham, Shankaracharya Madhyamam, Asmadacharya Paryantam, Vande Guru-Paramparam. Welcome to the final weekend session of the Prashnottara Ratnamalike, brought to us by Neema Majmudar. For those of you who joined us for the first time, I'd like to introduce the speaker. Neema ji is a unique combination of personal background, international exposure, education, and depth of spiritual knowledge, which makes her an inspiring writer and teacher of Indian philosophy. Neema ji studied Indian philosophy with Swami Dayananda Saraswati, and since 1999, she has been giving conferences, conducting seminars and retreats across the world in the domain of personal development and philosophy. Welcome, Neema ji. Neema ji, we can't hear you.
Yeah, I can hear. Oh, yeah. Okay. Now it takes a little time for the video to come on. Okay. So thank you, Anuradha ji. So this is the concluding session. So I'll finish the text. Last time we saw the last verse, which was Kutra Andrute Api Apapam. So on what occasions even a lie is not a sin, it's not something which is inappropriate. The Yatha Uktam Dharma Rakshanartham. So when it is uttered for the sake of protecting righteousness. So Mahabharata has many stories which talk about, how important it is to interpret dharma correctly and not to just stick to do's and don'ts. And that's what actually adds so much finesse to our scriptures, because even though they talk about universality of dharma, they don't make it into a rigid kind of a rule following thing. Every situation requires you to kind of see what is appropriate and what is in the larger good, and do what needs to be done. So that little flexibility, that ability to interpret is very much required, for which you need a kind of a refined buddhi, and not just, this obedient buddhi just keeps doing what you are told to do. So that is what we saw. Now let's move on. I'm doing number 48. Sadhu Balam Kim, right? What is the strength of the good, right? Daivam. So Daivam is, the grace that you earn, that is the strength of good. So this we need to understand a little, because there are many people who come to me and they complain and they said, you know what, in this day and age, being good doesn't pay at all. Right? So people who are crooked, people who are doing shortcuts, people who are not very ethical, they move ahead so much in life. And people who are honest, they do things which are to be done, then they suffer in life and they struggle. So this is like unfair, right? So now, if you understand this verse, then what you need to understand that any action, when it is responsibly done, when you do what needs to be done, sadhu is appropriate action, what is required in a situation. It doesn't come from your pressures, but it comes from, a place of honesty and integrity. Then what? It earns punya, and that becomes your strength. Why? Because punya is what technically what punya means is that it is an unseen result of an appropriate action. So what does that mean? So it means that even if you may feel as though the goodness doesn't pay, because right now you haven't seen a major improvement in your situation, but that doesn't mean that there is no compensation. So what the way life is, there is a cause and effect relationship. So sometime in the future, right, it will show up. And when it shows up, you may not even be able to connect, and you may not be able to say that, oh, I have done this and therefore I have that. But, we have all experienced that when you really need help, somebody shows up, somebody goes out of their way to help you. It may not be the person that you have helped. So this is all, or general well-being. These are all compensations. And the other compensation is when you do what needs to be done, then what happens? There is a drishtaphalam also. And what is that drishtaphalam? That your mind is free from conflict, free from fears, free from feeling guilt. And that itself is a compensation. So a very important thing is to realize is don't, judge the world as being unfair based on the little data that you have, and conclude that there is, that the good people, do not, do not get the right reward for the actions that they have performed. It is not true, because the world is governed by laws of cause and effect, which are infallible. The next, Gruham Ethinascha Mitram Kim. Who is a friend of a householder? Bharya, his wife. And this is something which is amazing. Again, being a female teacher, people ask me that what is, how does, what is the status of women in the Vedas? Are they discriminating? Are they the kind of thinking that men are superior and they have more rights than women do? And that becomes an issue for many people, So here, what is important is that who is your best friend? So your wife. So how is that relationship between husband and wife is supposed to be? Not that one is superior and the other one is inferior, and one dictates the terms and the other only has to be obedient. But your wife is your friend, and that is also included in Saptapadi. That according to the Vedic, Vivaha, life's purpose is moksha. So each one, not only male, even a female, any human being, right, is searching for moksha and is given the possibility of gaining the knowledge. And everybody's life is about gaining that freedom. But what your partner, right, is not an obstacle to that freedom. That partner helps you in the journey. So this is how this Vedic Vivaha is meant to be like, that let us be friends and help each other. And there is a certain independence maintained, because each one has their own goal, right? No other human being becomes your goal. Your goal remains understanding the reality and gaining freedom. But your partner can help you in the journey, and you can actually grow and learn, right? So this is why the best friend you have of a householder is wife. Kaha Shishtaha. Who is a refined human being? Yaha Veda Pramanavan, right? The one who has accepted Vedas as a pramana. Pramana means means of knowledge. So what does that mean, right? So here it's not about, generally we talk about, do you believe in God or you don't believe in God? So here it's not about believing in God or not believing in God, whether you accept Veda as a pramana. And what does that mean? Vedas they don't only talk about there is God, but they talk about all that is here is Ishvara. So that means if you accept Veda as a pramana, you're going to have little shraddha to actually listen to what Vedas are saying, and listen with an open mind, because it actually talks about what by knowing that the nature of Ishvara, you also get to know who you are, because the Swarupa of Ishvara is not separate from your Swarupa. So there is oneness, and that is something that you, if you accept Veda as a pramana, then what happens? You become a refined human being. The other way to look at it is, for most of the humanity, right? Suppose you ask them, what is your goal? Most of them, 99% of the time, they would say that their goal is to be a good human being. And that's wonderful, right? It's wonderful to be a good human being. But for Vedas, living a life which is sensitive and doing the right things falls within dharma. So, but in addition to dharma becomes a foundation. But in addition to dharma, there is another goal, and that is moksha. And that is very unique. Not many people. So, moksha is here and now. And it's about knowing realities. It's not about doing something and doing something good for the humanity. Doing good is good. It's not that it's not good, but that's not the final end. So if you bring Veda as a pramana, and begin to understand that my life journey is about discovering the truth, right? Then you become a refined human being. Otherwise, you remain within the same paradigm that I am a good human being and I have to do something good, right? So, the next, kaha dhanyaha, who is blessed? Sannyasi, right? So, sannyasi is blessed. Why? Right? So it's not that just because you take sannyasa, you become blessed, because sannyasi has two characteristics, right? What sannyasa stands for? That what you put your total trust in Ishvara's order. So that means you stop having an agenda. You don't want to use your free will to say, I want this, I want this. You kind of trust Ishvara and let your life be kind of, flow in the order of Ishvara and do what needs to be done and kind of fulfill your prarabdha, but without this jiva, a feeling that I'm in charge and I have to guide my life and I have to do this. So that, the nature of the world is, the world is not a scary place. The world is not a place which is to be given up. This is unfortunately how, unfortunately, is taught like that, as though you have to be averse to living and averse to life. Actually, really, who is a sannyasi? Where we see a scary world, that sannyasi sees Ishvara. That is something which is amazing. So therefore, world is no longer a scary place because it is all Ishvara's order, and Ishvara is pervading everywhere. So this is why this person is dhanyaha, this person is blessed. And also, right, and the only pursuit that sannyasi has is understanding Swarupa of Ishvara, which is non-separate from oneself. In that, there is moksha, right? The jiva, Aishwarya, Aikyam is ultimate purpose of life. And the person has dedicated, identified that this is what is the final goal, that not only I am seeking, it is supposed to be the goal of every human being. The person has identified it, and the person has the courage to live a lifestyle which is conducive for that discovery. So this is why the sannyasi life is a blessed life. Kaha data, who is the giver, right? Who is a good giver, right? So yaha arthi truptim atanute, right? The one who who is a good giver is the person who brings satisfaction to the needy, right? So that means when you give, the focus cannot be you, that, oh, I'm so good, or, I want my name. The focus always has to be the recipient and how one can satisfy. What are the needs of the recipient, and then to satisfy. And this is why Swamiji always used to say that giving is not always about money. We always think that giving is only, and sometimes it could be, but sometimes it is what he used to talk about annadanam. Annadanam is so important, feeding a person, right? Why? Because in every other danam, you can give the person a little more than what you have given, and the other person can always receive a little bit more than what they have received. So you don't totally 100% satisfy the person, but in annadanam, the receiver says enough, right? When you are full, in your stomach. You can't consume any more food. So the recipient says, I'm totally and fully satisfied. I can't receive more annam. And this is why Annadanam in our culture has a huge, there is a lot of punya attached, because you have distributed this food. The other one is what? Vidyadana. Vidyadana means, when you give knowledge to somebody, you have changed that person forever. You have changed the perception of that person. You have changed how the person feels, how the person views the world, and how the person acts. And that is a major contribution. Sometimes Danam can also be in form of just being there for people and available, right? And listen to them and give your undivided attention to that person. That is a big Danam, because in modern society, many people, right, feel lonely. They feel that even if there are two kinds of loneliness. One is when you don't have enough people around you, you feel lonely and you feel isolated. The other kind of loneliness is also a modern phenomena, when you're amidst people, you're with people, and you still feel lonely. And what does it mean? Our interactions always remain at a very superficial level. Nobody is able to talk at a deeper level. So even if they are living with people, even if they are amongst people, they feel lonely. So that is why what the person who recognizes your need and what caters to that need, that person is a real giver, right? So now the next, kasya na papam, right? For whom there is no sin. So what? Japataha, for the one who recites holy syllables, right? So japa gets a very big place in our tradition. So what is japa? It's a repetition of, Ishvara nama, right? So please understand, nowadays people say that, why should I bring Ishvara nama like Om Namah Shivaya or Om Namo Narayanaya? Why can't I just use any, sound which doesn't have any meaning? And if I keep repeating, would it not have the same benefits? And it would not have the same benefits, right? Why? Because relating to Ishvara is very important. Why? Because until you relate to Ishvara, until you begin to see the whole universe as nothing but manifestation of Ishvara, there is this ninja in you which will not go away. What? That you always see the world as source of fear, and you always want to protect yourself, and you're always guarded against everything. That individual has to drop. And what? You have to begin to trust, and you have to begin to see the wonder and the glory that is there. So that how does japa help? So let me a little bit talk about how does japa help. Generally, what happens is our mind goes from one subject to the other, right? So you think about, in the morning, right? You think you're praying to Shiva. So you think about Lord Shiva, and then your mind goes to what? Oh, your friend went to Mount Kailash. And then your mind goes to, oh yeah, I would like to go there also, but the journey is so difficult. Then you think about, oh, this Chinese, it's difficult to negotiate, and how come we don't have, a route from our country which is easier. So what happens is, you started thinking about Shiva, but in 1 minute, your mind went to, I don't know, China, India, the government policy, your friend, the journey. So this is how the mind is. It just moves from one thing to the other. And generally, it's okay, because we haven't given any task to the mind to kind of even recognize that this is how the mind is. And it just keeps going from one thing to the other. In seconds, it has reached, I don't know how many different places and how many different thoughts. So Then but the mind needs a little focus. So there is an ingenious way of what mastering the mind. I would not say controlling, because controlling is like, very difficult. You don't know what your next thought is going to be. You don't know what your thought is going to be, 1 hour from now. How are you going to control everything? But mastery is required. Mastery is required. And what japa does is gives you that mastery. How? Because you tell yourself that for next 10 minutes, you give a task to your mind that for next 10 minutes, I'm going to do Ramanama Japa, right? Suppose you say that, then what happens is, or Om Namah Shivaya, whatever, or Krishna or Narayana, anything, right? Now, when the mind, now that you have given the task to your mind to do this, not for the whole day, only 10 minutes, right? Then the mind will anyway, as it is used to, it will go somewhere else. But now that it goes somewhere else, you recognize that it's a deviation. Why is it distraction? Because this is not what you want your mind to do right now. So now that you have understood that it's a distraction, what will you do? You will bring it back. You will bring it back to its assigned task. And that itself is a very big thing. Why? Because if you wait for mind never to be distracted, you'll always be disappointed. But the point of japa is, when it is distracted, what you bring it back. So over a period of time, when you keep bringing it back to the chant, then what, over a period of time, the number of times that it gets distracted will reduce and mind will become more focused. And that focused mind, right, can stay with a given subject matter, analyze it, and not get distracted, and what, understand it deeply. So this is a huge benefit of japa. The second benefit of japa is that, not only we have a distracted mind, but we also have a mind which thinks through association. And what does it mean? So you see somebody, right? And you start thinking that, and you don't even quite know why. But you said, oh, this person is really nice, and nice because you don't know why. But, your mind has, this kind of a face that you have seen, the way the person is dressed. So it associates with all the memories that you have, and it gives you an impression of what the thing is. And then you build on that, right? So suppose when you like the person, you may be over trusting. When you don't like the person, you will be over prejudiced. So our mind, what they call that, there is a lot of subjectivity in our interpretations, which we don't realize. Why? Because through association, we have created a very big picture with very little data. So that is what we call it. It creates inaccuracies. And when we start thinking like that, then what happens is our mind is not like, abiding in what is. It mostly moves with our impressions. Those impressions seem like reality to us. So we are not always in touch with what is, even at a relative level. So you don't want that. You want to be as objective as possible and recognize things as they are. So what, this building, right? She's like this because, she has this or that. And, so this building up, which mind does very quickly, right? Logic within logic, which are your own logics. They are not very sound logic, but they are your own logics. And to create a picture of, a narrative about a thing. So here, what does japa do? Japa cuts it. How does it cut it? Because here, look at this. We are not, what is the first chant? Suppose you say, Om Namah Shivaya. What is the second chant? It's not building, it is Om Namah Shivaya. The third chant, Om Namah Shivaya. So what does it mean? It curbs the tendency of mind to move from one thing to the other and go on building stories. It stays with one chant, and what the mind keeps coming back to that chant. And that, what does it do? It makes your thinking more deliberate and less mechanical. This is very, very important in this whole thing of objectivity. Then there is a third benefit of japa. Right? Japa has multiple benefits, right? So the third benefit of japa is that when we have thoughts, we have so many different thoughts, and even though between thoughts there is always a silence, we never are aware of this silence, right? Because they are just this gap is fraction, and we don't even recognize it. So what happens as a result is we totally identify with our thoughts, and there is no distance that we have, cognitive distance that we appreciate between who I am and what I'm thinking. So what happens is, if right now among all the different thoughts, right, something has triggered sadness, right? So that's it's not that and then what you start telling yourself is I'm sad. So what has happened is that is a momentary state depending upon what has happened in your life, but it gets the whole label of I am sad. So there is no cognitive distance that we have between who we are and our thought world. So what does japa do? Japa is ingenious way of understanding that distance. Why? Because in between chants, right, you say Om Namah Shivaya, then there is a pause. Then the next Om Namah Shivaya. So right. So this pause and chant, pause and chant. So what does it gives us an insight? What kind of an insight? That pause is called silence, right? Silence, then chant, silence and chant. What is that insight that we have to understand? That the thought comes and goes, right? So when the thought, before that thought came, Om Namah Shivaya, you are there. While the thought is there, you are there. When the thought is gone, you are there. So what does it mean? That there is a presence which is there before any thought comes, right? And the thoughts are momentary. They come and they go, but that presence is never displaced. That presence, generally what happens is we are so unaware of, which is your true nature, which is always there, which is actually never impacted by any thought. Thought has no capacity to contaminate that presence, and that awareness, the presence of that consciousness, which is independent of thought, we never come to recognize. So in that mantra, in japa, we actually begin to see that thought comes and goes. Now, also, please understand, just as thought comes and goes, even silence comes and goes, right? So don't think I'm silenced, because if you were silenced, then when the thought came, you'll disappear. Then you don't disappear when the silence goes. So what I am that presence, what the absence of thought in the mind is called silence. Presence of thought in the mind is called, you have a thought. So what these are all the characteristics of the mind, that it has thought at a time, it ceases to think at a time, and those gaps can be increased or whatever, but those are the characteristics of the mind, and you are the one in whose presence thought is known and silence is known, and that individual and that reality, which is of the nature of consciousness, never gets impacted, doesn't get affected by the nature of thought. And what japa gives you an insight into this true nature that you have been hearing about in Vedanta, right, in the classes. So it makes you familiar with yourself. There is this presence, Sat and Chit, right, which is there, which is your true nature, that nobody can displace. It can never come and go. It is the reality, which is the only reality, which is constant. Everything else is in flux. So it puts you in touch. And finally, as I told you, japa are not meaningless sounds. So japa is what Om Namah Shivaya. So what you relate to Ishvara. So when we live life, we don't live life seeing Ishvara everywhere. So what here your mind is reminded that my salutations to Ishvara, my salutation to Ishvara. So what you convert every aspect of your life as what you have to see it within Ishvara's order. Anything that has happened to you, anything that you have gone through, these are all about, not that somebody is punishing you or somebody is, giving you a hard time, but it is an infallible order within which all these experiences take place. And if you actually begin to, or sometimes difficult experiences give you, a huge, a quantum jump in your growth. And so what you have to bring Ishvara in your life. So japa also allows you to do that. So life becomes relatively easily flowing and less struggle, with less struggle because of your understanding, not because things are going to change overnight, but how you view life undergoes a major change, right? So this is why what japa is considered to be a very purifying, kasya na papam, right? It will purify you and it will take you towards your journey. It will make your mind ready for this knowledge. That's why japa is highlighted. Kim dushkaram narana. What is difficult for human beings? Yan manasaha nigraha satatam. This is interesting. The complete mastery over the mind is very difficult. So there is in Bhagavad Gita, Arjuna asked Lord Krishna, he says, my God, this mind is so difficult. It is like, air. It just moves from one thing to, how can I keep it under my control? And what Lord Krishna says is very interesting. He says it's true that mind is not easy, right? Why? Because it just flows and you don't know why this thought came up, why you just built on it, why some situations that trigger so much, sometimes pain in you, and others, and they don't think it's a big deal. So what it means is mind has its own ways, and how to kind of gain certain mastery is not very easy, right? So what does, how do you can't control mind, as I told you, because you don't know what your next thought is, right? But what you can do is mastery. So what is this mastery? Just I wanted to briefly talk about it so that people have an understanding. Otherwise, we just keep repeating things without really understanding things. So there are two centers in the mind. One is a mind, which is an instinctive mind, which is neuroscientifically, it is called amygdala, right? So what happens is when there is a situation, external stimuli, then what will happen? The mind will interpret it in a way that it is used to, and it will respond. So, this is what we call instinctive impulsive response, right? Now, sometimes that instinctive response may be appropriate because your mind has recognized what is the situation accurately and it responds. Sometimes, as I told you, the mind has a lot of inaccuracies. It has its own stories, its own narratives, its own way of looking at things. So what the impulse may not be really in keeping with what is outside. And if you just act on it, then what happens is, you have zero mastery, right? So whatever your mind, the data, the way your mind interprets that data, and that becomes the basis of your actions. So here, what is mastery? That you have another center of mind, which is what we call cognitive mind. That is impulsive mind, which works on instinct, which is amygdala. And then there is another, which is called prefrontal cortex. And what is this? This is what in Sanskrit we call it buddhi. And what is that? You are able to analyze. You are able to pause. You are able to think about, hey, this is the message that my mind is giving. Is it appropriate or not? So, right, before you actually choose to act, this faculty that you have, which is your cognitive capacity, if you can use it, right, without trying to stop, because nobody can totally stop amygdala. And it also has, impulsive thinking also has its own benefit. Sometimes in some situations, because if you're crossing the road, right, and if there is a car coming at a high speed, you don't need to use your cognitive mind and say, oh, now what should I do? Is it appropriate for me to, retract or what? You have to decide very quickly, and you either have to run forward or retreat backwards. So that instinctive mind has its own use. So it's not a bad thing, but not every situation requires an instinctive response. So selectively, what you can do is use your cognitive capacity to check the messages that are given by your impulsive mind. And this is that cognitive distance. I may be upset, I may be angry, but I don't need to act from there. I have my cognitive capacity. I can still think about what is required in the situation and choose another response and not just angry response. So this is what we call mastery over the mind. And this, according to this book, is difficult. It is difficult because it requires a lot of self-reflection. It requires you to come to terms with who you are, and change your ways of being, because the easiest way to live in life is to blame somebody, right? This person is like that, the government is like that, society is like that, this community is like that. I mean, it's endless, right? And that's easy because you always remain this perfect person and everybody else is at fault. So you have to change that, and that is difficult for human beings. And then to use that cognitive capacity and see where your responses come, that is hard, right? But if you can accomplish it, then that is what is required. That becomes the basis for that final, the foundation on which the final knowledge can actually be well established. Now, Sarvesham Kaha Jivan Hetuhu. Who is the cause of livelihood for everyone? Saha Parjanyaha. Wow, this is interesting. That is the date. So what is the cause for livelihood? You think that, all this education that we have, it gives us livelihood, it gives us employment opportunities, and we can earn our living. Here it is something totally different. What? Rains. So how are rains connected to your livelihood, right? So this is what I say. This mind, a Vedic mind, right, becomes a subtle mind. It begins to see interconnections. It's not just, oh, I want this, and it's not like this singular linear mind. It begins to see life in its totality. So how does water contribute, right? Now think about life without water. What will happen? Water is such an important ingredient in our life. Not only we need water on a daily basis, but also what all living beings need water, right? So if you go to, these jungles in Africa, right, to these national parks, Serengeti, Masai Mara. So you have gone so far away to see these games, see these animals. So the tour guides, they know exactly how to make sure that you see all those games so that you don't go disappointed, right? So what they do is they take you early morning to a water body. And when they take you to a water body early in the morning, you will see all these animals congregated there, and what they've come to take water. So this is where you see everyone there. So water is required not only for us, but for every living being. Now, let's little bit think about how does this potable water, how is it made available? How is it made available? So I used to live on the beach in Bombay, Juhu Beach, no longer, but I used to live there. So one day there was no water in my building, and I was just thinking to myself that it's an irony because I'm living in front of the ocean, which has unlimited water, but I can't just go and fetch that water. And for my consumption, it has to become portable. And how there is this whole arrangement within Ishvara's order, which makes that salt water portable for my consumption and consumption of every other living being. So what sun participates, it evaporates the ocean water, forms into clouds. The clouds actually what at the right time bring rains, and that rain travels right from inlands to the ocean. By that, what it not only the saline water is made into potable water, but through this journey, what it gives water to everyone. So what does it mean? That anything that you have accomplished, anything that you think is all due to you, it is what it all happens within Ishvara's order. There is just, without water, there is no you. Without sun, there is no you. Without, the plant kingdom, there is no you. So what that which gives you life, the whole setup is Ishvara's setup. Nothing belongs to you as such, right? You are only given opportunities within that setup to accomplish what you have to accomplish. And you have to choose which area you want to accomplish, right? So this is something that when you begin to recognize, then what your Jivan Hetu is, your life is dependent upon so many forces and the whole system. And that whole system doesn't belong to any human being, but it belongs to the larger order of Ishvara. So this is what you have to understand. Yeah. Now, the next, Kahahi Jagadguru Uktaha. So, who is said to be the world teacher, right? So here, Shambhu, teaching what Shambhu is, Lord Shiva. So there is the chant that Anuradhaji starts with, and I think it's a very famous chant in the tradition. Sada Shiva Samarambham, Shankaracharya Madhyamam, Asmadacharya Parintam, Vande Guru-Parampara. Right? So that also, right? Adi Shankaracharya is a great teacher of Advaita, right? And he has, why is he a great teacher? Because he has written many books. He has written commentaries on Upanishads and Brahma Sutra and Bhagavad Gita, and everything we all teach based on Adi Shankaracharya's commentary. But Advaita, right, the knowledge, it is what doesn't belong to Adi Shankaracharya. Every knowledge, what belongs to Ishvara. Ultimately, human beings only what is already is, right? And that is within Ishvara's order. And human beings only remove ignorance and get to see what is, right? So we are never authors of any knowledge. Author is always Ishvara. And this is not only in case of the spiritual knowledge. Every knowledge is like that. Swamiji always used to tell us that, we think that every other knowledge belongs to us and nothing belongs to us. So what, before Newton, right, recognized this law of gravity, right? Law of gravity was already there, right? Making thousands and thousands of apples and everything other objects fall. And the law of gravity also holds what Earth in its own position and prevents it from colliding with other, other planets or other luminaries in the sky. So therefore, the gravity was not created or not invented by Newton, but what it was only discovered. It existed before Albert Einstein understood that E is equal to mc squared. Actually, there is nothing but what transformation of energy into matter and matter back into energy. This was already there, right? So this is what we call knowledge always rests on Sarvajna Ishvara, right? What do we human beings do? We remove our ignorance and we see what the truth is, right? So in this case, it is particular things, gravity, the nature of the world, where the energy transforms into matter and matter back into energy. In this case, what is the knowledge? All that is here is Ishvara. Here, through this knowledge, Ishvara reveals whole of Ishvara, right? Not just part from one standpoint, but all that is here is Ishvara. When you see forms, that's exactly where I am. And what that you human beings with their own perception, right, and inference can never see this reality. So this is why the ultimate author is the ultimate teacher is Ishvara, right? So through this is why we say Vedas are revealed scriptures, where what the Ishvara reveals whole of itself, right? Whole of what is the reality through these scriptures. And not only that, but through these scriptures also make you see that if all that is here is one, you can't be separate from it, right? So essentially, you are that one. So this is why the first teacher is always Ishvara. Everything else, this is why we have this Guru Shishya Parampara, but we always remember that your Guru is only a link and not the author of this tradition. And that's beautiful. And every Guru also has to remember that, so that it doesn't become anything about you. It always remains your part that you're playing to what carry this tradition, which it reveals the nature of Ishvara as your true nature also. So that is the first teacher is always Ishvara. Shambhu. Muktim labhet kasmat. How can one get release? How does one get moksha? Right here, you could actually, there are so many ways of answering this question. You can say knowledge, or this pramana. But the way, this is the beauty of Adi Shankaracharya. Sometimes he's very cognitive and he's impeccably logical, and sometimes he speaks from the heart, and both are required, right? Because it's a knowledge of whole, it can't be partial. So this is why his answer is Mukunda Bhaktehe. So what is this? By devotion to Mukunda, God Vishnu. So as I said, that what is the whole pursuit of Vedanta? What is his pursuit of oneness, right? The pursuit of oneness is when you see many, you have to see only one. And that one initially is what? First, that one, right? So let me give you an example. A wave which sees many waves, how will it see one? How is it possible to see only one? It's not possible to change your vision and not see all the waves. But when you bring the ocean, then what happens is you can retain the vision of all the different waves. You can enjoy the differences among the waves, but you still don't lose the sight of the fact that all these waves come from one, and that is the ocean. So they each, this diversity, this variety, it all comes from ocean. Every wave has its being in ocean. Every wave comes from the ocean, is sustained by the ocean. The laws of ocean govern, where it is going to be, when it is going to be extinct, and it goes back into the ocean. So this is why, without changing your perception, by bringing the presence of ocean, you come to this vision of oneness. But that is what then there is one more level of this Advaita. And what is that? The second level is that very ocean which contains every wave has its own truth. And what is that truth? It is water. And what all that is here is one water, on which what two different upadhis. One is Samashti Upadhi, which is ocean, which contains every wave, and the other is Vyashti Upadhi, which is wave. Both the upadhis, both the appearances are within one reality, which is free from both. Water is neither the ocean, water is nor the wave. But none of the two can exist without the water, and water is the final truth. So this is what we call Swarupa. One is the Upadhi, which is ocean, and the other is Swarupa, which is the reality of the ocean. So similarly, what we can understand is all these world of names and forms, they come from one Sarvajnaha, Sarva Shaktiman Ishvara, right? And that Ishvara is what pervading everything, right? So who you are, what everybody else is, it is all within laws of cause and effect. Ishvara doesn't have an agenda. It is what our, how the choices that we make and the world that we see, which seems like all bad and all. There's nothing bad. It is just what if you have, right, chosen inappropriate actions, you cannot magically expect the world to give you beautiful things. It's not possible. Why? Because if that was the case, things would be totally unjust, right? So whether you do good actions or you have very manipulative actions, everybody is given wonderful results. So that there is the so-called equality that we expect is just our imagination. It is not just. So we kind of mix up what equality with justice. So what is important is, first we have to understand that all that is here, everything takes place within this intelligent order, which has set up the universe in a way that there are cause and effect relationships, and that is impartial, it is impersonal, and it is unbiased. So that is what we first, that will bring oneness immediately. Then then there is Swarupa of Ishvara. And what is Swarupa? That even that Swarvadnaha and Sarvashaktiman, the knowledge and power, requires one final content upon which it depends, and that is Satyam Jnanam Anantam Brahma. That is the final truth upon which both Ishvaropadhi, which is the total samashti, and Jiva Upadhi, which is Vyashti, both depend upon. And that reality is the final reality. It is independent of both, and itself is without which none of the two can exist. So this is the final oneness that Advaita, that Prapancha Upashama, as Mandukya Upanishad talks about it. This is the Advaita. So this is what you first need to, how will you understand that? First, you need to bring Ishvara in your life. So first, a wave gets well when it sees the presence of ocean. So it doesn't say, why life is so unfair, or why am I born and I'm becoming extinct? Why this wave is so big and so beautiful and I'm so small? These kind of perceptions will go away for that person, and the person will begin to live meaningfully. This is called Mukunda Bhakti, right? So you need a non-projecting mind for Vedanta. Now imagine, right? Can you imagine? This is just so incongruent. We don't understand what we are doing. But suppose you say, oh, the world is so bad, and the world is like this, and the world is like that. And then what? Your truth of that horrible world. You don't want to be the truth of that horrible world. So what? The world which you think is bad or anything, these are our labels, because the data that we have is so limited. So our vision is limited. If you expand the understanding, then what? Everything is according to the cause and effect relationship. So this is what will do, what bhakti to Ishvara, right? What will it do is this dissatisfied, cynical human being, critical human being that we are all, and constantly judging and putting things in, categories and blocks and rigid and all, that individual has to melt. And that is required. This is a precondition for this knowledge. Okay. Kim Sukham. So, Kim Sukham. What is happiness? Tushtihi. Tushtihi is contentment. So what? there are two levels of contentment. One is alam buddhi. And what is alam buddhi? This human being, we have insatiable desires, right? So one thing you satisfy and something else comes up, and then that you satisfy and something else comes up, and it's endless, right? So it keeps us in that chase, and in that chase, right, you are never actually able to be satisfied, right, or to enjoy all the privileges that you are endowed with. So this is why this relative contentment, which is what we call alam buddhi. And what is alam buddhi? Wow, I have been given so much, right? I've been given air to breathe. I've been given water to drink. And there is a whole system behind, right? Even for air to breathe, right? Plants participate. They take away carbon dioxide from the atmosphere and release oxygen, which so that otherwise what will happen is all of us are taking in oxygen and giving out carbon dioxide. The air will become so polluted in a very short time, which will not make our life possible. So every need of mine, right, to satisfy the most basic and simple need of mine, the entire system is created. That is amazing. It is amazing to see that I live in a benign universe. I live in a universe which is generous universe. The sun never says, I'm taking a Sunday off. You're not, I'm giving you life. I give you rains. I give you energy, through the plants. And you never even look at me. And it doesn't complain. It just gives and gives and gives. There is a lot of benevolence. There is a lot of generosity in this creation. And when you begin to see the world like that, what it brings about an inner transformation, and that will give tushtihi. And what is tushtihi? This dissatisfied human being will turn into a person who has gratitude, who's alive to the magic that is, this creation, and how it is blessing us with so many things. And we are ever non-grateful for everything that we receive. Everything that we receive, we take it for granted, and we keep complaining about something which is not right. And this human mind has to go. And this is what we call contentment will bring sukham. But from that contentment, you can do things. It's not like once you're content, that you will not do anything. Adi Shankaracharya, right? From that place of contentment, he wrote all the bhashyam, right? It's not like once you're content, you'll not do anything. In fact, you can do a lot more. This dissatisfaction consumes a lot of energy. It makes our mind dull. It makes our mind superficial. It makes our mind not very efficient. You can't accomplish, many things from a mind which is, reeling from all this hurt and guilt and anger and pain and suffering. What can that mind produce, right? So that means that satisfaction is very important, right? Relative satisfaction. Then you talk about the absolute satisfaction. And what is that absolute tushtihi? When you understand that Atma is already full, all that is here is Atma, then how can there not be any contentment, right? There is no second thing in this universe to be dissatisfied about. So this is why that will bring the final and absolute contentment. So the final and absolute contentment is what? Recognizing the nature of Atma, that it is not this small entity, it is Satyam Gnanam Anantam Brahma. But a relative contentment is an attitude of mind, which begins to see the world differently, begins to see a world as being pervaded by Ishvara and Ishvara's glory everywhere. Okay. Now, the next. Kaha Indra Jalayate. What is the divine magic, right? What is this magic? So prapancha ayam, this world itself is magic, right? So many times, this so-called spirituality, unfortunately, is very, in the minds of people, it is connected to some form of magic. right? So suppose somebody has some power, right? So you can produce some objects, or you can, guess somebody's future. So that person is mistaken to be, that person may be spiritual, but this is not an indication of one's spirituality. Person can have a lot of talents, and they can be good in many things, but that's not an indicator of one's spirituality. So so mind gets fascinated by the small magics that people can do, right? The things which are unusual that we cannot do and somebody else can do, and we feel that, this person is very special, and we give that person some status of being a divine or evolved human being. But what the biggest magic is, what Ishvara. What is Ishvara's magic? Look at this. It is incredible that, that there is one intelligence which creates these infinite forms, right? Now, and the forms are so varied, and they are so different from each other. So what happens is, what is this magic? We only see the forms. We don't understand that there is one intelligence behind every form that there is, right? For each form to be what it is. This is not, something that you have to accept. Just think about, right? Within your own body, which is one form. Just think about it, right? Because what Upanishads are talking about is reality. They are not giving you some bhashan about, what you should think and what you should not think. They are making you see what is just behind one form, right? How much intelligence is behind this form? What does it mean? How your eyes are designed. Did you design them? No, right? You can go to an ophthalmologist who has studied eyes for years and years and years, right? To be able to intervene intelligently to solve your problems. But these eyes were already given to you. These eyes are connected to the brain, right? Then you have nose, which has its own domain. And how it can recognize smell, how it can breathe air, how it can filter that air and send it down there. So every organ, every part of your body is so intelligently designed. Right? You have your mouth, then you have your digestive system, you have your circulatory system, you have evacuation system. It's just systems within systems within systems, right? And then what you have, everything is done, all the physical systems, and then what there is mind which interprets the data, and it's able to make sense of the world and oneself, and it is able to interact and transact with the world. So within this body itself, there are all different laws, right? There are physical laws, there are biological laws, there are genetic laws, there are neuroscience laws, there are all psychological laws. All the laws operate within this 5 feet, 7 inch or 8 inch or 6 feet body. And not only that, every other form exhibits the same, the system, and there is a whole system, and within that form, the entire system is manifest. Whether you look at fish body or you look at human body, so fish also has senses, it has a digestive system, it has a spine, it has everything, but the form is very different. So this is where there is form, that's exactly where there is intelligence. How can you miss it, right? You only see the forms, you miss that which makes every form what it is. So what is this magician? The intelligence which gives rise to this infinite forms, right? The bird looks very different from fish. Fish looks very different from an animal. Animal looks very different from a human. So you have all these varieties, right? Infinite varieties. And even within those infinite varieties, within one group, there are infinite differences, right? So that is why there are 3 kinds of Vedas: Sajatiya Veda, Vijatiya Veda, and Swagata Veda. This is Ishvara's creation. So what is Sajatiya Veda? What is Vijatiya Veda? Means among species, there are, the differences. So insect, it looks very different from elephant, right? So this is all the Vedas, which are called Vijatiya Veda. Then Sajatiya Veda. So among all the, suppose you take one group, which is Sajati, and you can decide what that group is. You can name that group and you can say animals. So that means the bird will not fall into that group because it's an animal group. But within animal, there are so many varieties, right? So deer looks very different from a lion. So that all is all just one intelligence, which makes it also different. And Svagata Bheda. What is Svagata Bheda? Within one form, there are intricacies, so much knowledge, which makes that form what it is. So this is this is Ishvara's creation. Having created this varied Jagat, look at the magician, right? And the cause is hidden from all of us, right? Because we don't see intelligence, we only see manifestation. We only see the forms, and what we forget, that from which every form has come. This is magic, right? And then what happens is, then we begin to live within forms and with our own understanding, and live within shadows, right? So this is the magic. This is magician Ishvara, which is what from its own, it's just the whole creation is just manifestation of one. And we only think about manifestation, and we get entangled in that manifestation, and we forget the source, we forget the cause, we forget that final thing upon which everything else depends. So this is what he calls is the biggest magic. Yeah. So the presence which is everywhere, and we keep missing. Now, Satyam apicha kim, what is real, right? So what is real is Brahma. And what is Brahman? We have seen that in Chandogya Upanishad, right, there is a statement, Vacha Rampanam Vikaro Namadheyam Mrittika Ityeva Satyam. So what you have 10 pots in front of you. You have 1,000 pots in front of you. You can have 1 lakh pots in front of you. It doesn't matter. If your the drishti is in forms, you will calculate what 1,000, 10,000, 1 lakh, 1 crore, whatever. But if your drishti is in the content, then there is only one. Everything else is vak arampanam, right? So there is a form and there is a name for it, but in reality, vrittika ityeva satyam. All that is here. If your buddhi goes to the content, then there is only one clay. You can't count the second, right? So this is the satyam that Vedanta points out, which is Brahman. So I just want to tell you a little story that once our Swamiji was invited by a jeweler who opened a showroom, and it was a very fancy showroom, and he asked Swamiji to inaugurate it. So, Swamiji was happy to do that. So he went there, and, this person was so happy that Swamiji graced that inauguration. So he said, Swamiji, I'm so touched that you came. So you just ask me for one thing, and I'll be very, very happy to, give it to you, because I feel so blessed that you were present in this occasion. And Swamiji was, he was a little mischievous. So he says, be careful. You're talking to a Vedantin, and you're asking me to take one thing, expecting that either I'll choose a bangle, or I'll choose a bracelet, or I'll choose whatever. He says, a Vedantin is not, so simpleton. What if you ask a Vedantin, they'll say, give me gold. One thing, I only need one thing, and you give me gold. And what he will have to empty his whole store, because there is no ornament that exists without the presence of gold, right? So ornaments are many, right? One is ring, one is earring, one is bracelet, the other is bangle, necklace, all these, but what there is only one goal. And these are all Vak Arampanam, Vikaraha. Vikaraha means these are just modifications. For these modifications, there are different names. Why there are different names? Because you can't put earring, the ring on the earring, right? So they have a given form, and they have a specific name that indicates that given form, and every form has a unique function. So all those differences are there. You don't need to stop those differences, but what we do need to understand is we are so enamored by the forms, right? We forget that all that is here is gold. So this is why Satyam is what this Brahman, everything else is Vak Arampanam, right? So any form that you look, which is a unique form, which is so intelligently put together, it will all collapse into one reality. And how do we do that? Well, this body, which has all these different parts, right, are nothing but cells. Without cells, there are no different parts, no organs, no nothing. The cells are nothing but atoms. The atoms are nothing but particles. The particles are nothing but quarks. And it just keeps going on and on and on. And quantum physics, what does it do? It keeps collapsing more and more and more and more. And then ultimately, all that remains is just a concept. Why? Because even scientists cannot find the final substance upon which the whole world depends upon. Everything just collapses. And that concept, right? What Vedanta says is that it is, please don't think that any external object is the building block of the universe. What is building block of the universe is this consciousness, which is not given to you as an object, but it is content of every object. And it is given to you as I am, I am, I am, right? So concept collapses into consciousness, and the only place this consciousness is available to us is what in our buddhi as self-revealing I am, right? So this is what we call swataha siddhaha. Swataha siddha means it is self-revealing. It doesn't, because it's not an object, you don't require senses. You don't even require the mind. It is because of mind, right? Because of the presence, the conditions of mind are seen. It is because of which the senses operate. It is because of which your eyes are able to do what they are able to do. And this is something which is swataha siddhaha. Swataha siddha means self-revealing reality. So this is why what this final truth, the final satyam, right? And this is magician Ishvara. It has hidden this final truth, what as one's true nature. And what we do is our own nature we disown, and we keep looking right at the world and for our satisfaction, that fullness that is our true nature, which you don't even have to do anything about, but you just have to own up, that is hidden from us, and we keep searching. And this is what that finding that satyam is extremely important, because then you have solved the puzzle of life. Otherwise, it just keeps continuing, and it, in this whole samsara where you go up and down, and you don't really get hold of what life and its purpose is. What is life and what's the purpose? Why we are here? We miss that, right? So satyam is what. So now I don't know, there are so many comments. Now I think Anuradha ji, you will have to look at those comments, because while I talk, I don't have that capacity to, so maybe I can
please, we will take up all those questions. Definitely. We can take some time.
Yeah, okay, yeah. Now, and then Kim Mithya, right? So what is Mithya? Now we need to understand that Mithya is not illusion. Please, these are technical terms which have to be understood properly. Otherwise, what will happen is we'll make world into an illusion. With Mithya is defined as dependent reality. What is dependent reality? I can't say this ring is an illusion. I cannot say these earrings are an illusion. Suppose I claim that, then what? Whoever is claiming that, I'll say, oh, if it's an illusion, don't be stuck with that illusion. Give me that ring, give me that earring, and nobody will give me. So this is why what mithya is a dependent reality. What is dependent reality? The ring, it is a fact, right? The ring has its existence in gold. Gold doesn't have its existence in ring. This is what we call satya mithya relationship. What one depends upon other for its existence, this is called mithya. But satyam doesn't depend upon mithya for its existence. Ring depends upon gold for its existence. If I take out gold, there is no form called ring that can exist. But gold doesn't require ring. What does it mean? That a goldsmith can melt this form, ring, and create another form. What it can, he or she can create earring. So what gold is independent of the form, but form is not independent of the content. So this is what we call mithya. So the entire Jagat is what we call mithya, because it depends upon, as I told you, Ishvara, that Sarvajnaha Sarvashaktiman, intelligence for its existence, and what the Brahman doesn't depend upon forms for its existence. So this is what we need to understand. Okay.
Neema, can I interrupt? I mean, it's up to you. Do you want to conclude at this stage or take more questions from the audience and explain further? Or we have 10 more minutes left, actually.
Oh, we have 10 more minutes left. So I'll just do, I want to stop with the punch, which is the next two, and I'll just do it in 2 minutes, and then we can take questions, right?
Okay,
yeah.
Thank you.
So the punchline, so what is the purpose of all of this, right? We've studied some, I don't know how many different questions and brilliant answers of Acharya, but ultimately, what is it that it is trying to show? So what the next question is, Kim Kalpitam? What is imagined? What is superimposed? And that is what Dvaitam. Dvaitam is superimposed. The forms are reality, but because the forms are there, there are many. That is Kalpita. That is our superimposition. And what is Kim Paramarthikam Syat? What is the reality? Advaitam. Advaitam means the non-duality is the final truth. For that understanding this non-duality, you don't need to give up forms. You don't need to destroy every ornament to know that all that is here is gold. This is beauty of Advaita, right? You can never collapse the whole universe. Universe is going to continue to be what it is. Even if you close your eyes, doesn't mean the sun, for you it may disappear, but the sun is still there. The moon is still there, the air is still there, the trees are there, right? The planets are there. That you cannot, that is part of Ishvara Srishti. You can't collapse it, and it is going to go on. It is Anadi and Anantam. But in this world of forms, what happens is we get totally caught in that because we forget that there is only one truth, one reality, and all the forms are manifestation of that reality. So if through this inquiry of Shastra, you come to know that truth, then what you can enjoy all the forms. Forms do not, they are not, our perception of forms is not opposed to Advaita. In spite of forms, there is Advaita, and that is the knowledge. That is the brilliance of Adi Shankaracharya. So this is why what the last verse is what Ityesha Kanthastaha Prashnottara Ratnamalikaha Yesham Te Mukta Bharana Iva Vimala Bhanti Sat Samajeshu. So what does it mean? The people who have studied this Prashnottara Ratnamalika, and they have made it what they have memorized it, and they contemplate on it, and they think about it, then what will happen is they will be able to, they will shine, those people will shine, and they'll be able to answer any question that anybody has, and they will live with freedom. So thank you. That comes to, this is an end of the text.
Thank you so much, Neema ji, for this wonderful presentation. And we've all benefited. Today's highlight was really about the value of japa, which you shared with us, how our mind changes more immediately, and the adrishta phala, and also, of course, to understand our very nature. So those are very, very valuable learnings for all of us. As you pointed out, we have lots of questions, and we will try to take as many as we can. The first question from Raghavan ji is that, is there an exercise to modify the mind's movements?
Yes, it's a good, so in the Shastra itself, there are many methodologies that are given, right, to improve the quality of mind. One is dharma, right? So we talk extensively about following dharma, and dharma itself is divided into two parts. One is called Samanya Dharma and the other is Swadharma. So what it means is mind has its own way of looking at things, but now you're to change the nature of the mind, we are told that there is something which is universal. And what is universal? That I don't want to be lied to, I don't want to be cheated, I don't want to be hurt, and others also do not want to be hurt. So in your pursuit, take that into account, right? If you don't take that into account, then what will happen is there will be repercussions. So this is the changing of the mind, right? Then the second thing is Swadharma. And what is Swadharma? Swadharma is, you just don't do what you feel like doing, depending upon your raga dvesha. You live in an interconnected world, and you have duties and responsibilities. You have duties, multiple duties and responsibilities. So that will change the mind. Then you are made to understand, right? Krodha, all this, different things that your mind is afflicted with, all the emotions which come on the way, which keep you entangled, which keep you in a very kind of restricted view of life, that you need to take care of. So Bhagavad Gita extensively talks about, how important it is to take care of your emotional life. And then also the other thing, how to change, the quality of mind is what to recognize Ishvara's order. Because a lot of our problems also come from when things don't happen our way, we project on the world. We project dissatisfaction of the world. So we need to understand that everything cannot happen my way because, these laws of cause and effect, they are for millennia, right? So you, within your perception, the data that you have, everything may seem unfair, but it is not unfair if you take all the large data, right, which is running the universe for millennia. So that also will change, right, this quality of mind from being a dissatisfied person or naming the world. You will begin to understand that contentment and beginning to gratitude, all that will come. These are all changing your mind, right? They are changing the quality of your thoughts.
Thank you for that explanation. There's one more question, which is that, I think the question is that, how would you answer the hard problem of consciousness?
Yes.
Question, yeah.
Okay, so how do you answer the hard problem? So let me just give you an example, right? So one thing we need to understand when we say that Vedanta is a pramana, what it means is what it means, right? That if our perception and inference was able to arrive at consciousness, then you don't need Vedanta as a pramana. Why? Science will do, right? Because science is based on empirical data, and using extensive logic to understand the what is empirically possible to be observed. So there is only one reality that is not given to us as an object. There is only one reality which is given to us, is not given to us, but as Swatah Siddha, self-revealing presence, which it cannot be objectified, right? So if the whole of science is based on objectification, understanding the data, observation, empirical knowledge, so this is why if through scientific methods you want to arrive at consciousness, it will never happen. It will never happen because it is not within the domain of empirical, right? You have to understand this is Paramarthika, and Paramarthika is not an object. If it was an object, it will become what? Something which is within time and space. If it is within time and space, then it cannot be the cause of the universe. It will only become an effect. So that one has to recognize. But what gives strength to this pramana is, even if it talks about something which cannot be arrived at through perception and inference, it cannot be contradicted by any logic. This is something which actually gives strength to Vedanta. There is no logic in the world that you have to deny that there is a presence, right? All the objects, they are forms within forms within forms. And there is this self-revealing presence in whose presence every object gets revealed. There is no, right? That is something that you, even though you don't, you are not in touch with that presence, it can be pointed out. And there is nobody who can deny it. And if this whole universe is just collapsing, what will divide that consciousness? Tell me. The world of forms, right? They themselves collapse. So therefore, there is no possibility that those forms can divide consciousness because they don't have an independent existence. They all collapse in that consciousness. So consciousness remains one undivided whole, and every form becomes dependent upon that consciousness. There is no logic in the world which can actually deny that, right? So that is what gives strength to Vedanta. And it's not just a belief, it is not faith, it is showing reality, and it is ingenious. So but you have to approach it as a pramana, not through scientific methods. That we have to be careful.
We have one more question. Do we really need to be concerned about the pranks of the mind, controlling the mind, etc., and just focus on the seer of the mind?
Yeah. So what happens is, the whole Vedanta is taught in a way that, if you try to skip the reality of mind, then what will happen is, this is what is a common problem, right? Which is what we call dissociation. You try to kind of disown your mind and only think about this consciousness, and the consciousness is the truth. Consciousness is the truth of every thought, is a reality. It's a fact. But what happens is that if you skip the mind, it becomes superficial knowledge. So what preparation for Vedanta is, what is a preparation? You first need to have a non-projecting mind, from this dissatisfied mind to a content mind. And isolated, the person who feels isolated and persecuted, they have to develop trust in the universe. This is why that Ishvara Bhakti, as the Adi Shankaracharya said, is extremely important. Why? Because this world which is scary, right? And the mind is reporting this scary world, right? You have to convert it into a benign world with divine presence. And then you can see the truth of that divinity as Satyam Dhanam Anantam Brahma. If you don't recognize Ishvara, then how will Ishvara be able to reveal its final truth as being one with you? So you, in understanding the presence of Ishvara, mind undergoes a very important quality change, the transformation. And that transformation makes Advaita really a reality and not just escape to life, and you can live from that fullness. You can live, a meaningful life and not just escape the world and, create your own illusion of this oneness and just talk about it and unconnect it to the reality. Where mithya is, that's exactly where Satyam is, right? Where ornament is, that's where gold is. If you try to negate the presence of ornament, you'll never get to gold. So this is why world of forms you cannot skip. Where the world of forms is, the content is this reality. So you need to understand. For that, you need not non-escaping mind, the mind which abides in truth and is able to see different levels.
One of this audience person wanted to know the physics of the Vedas, the three Vedas that you spoke about. So that is his query.
Physics?
The physics of the three Vedas, he's asking you to explain.
Yeah, so what, there is no physics or anything. So there are three kind of Vedas. One is what we call Sajatiya Veda. If you look at the world, right, and if you want to just create a framework to see the variety. Otherwise, if you look at how many objects are there are trillions of objects, right? And things that are known to you and things which are not known to you. So how will you fathom this world? So these are the frameworks created to make you see, collapse this variety into a certain category. So what are those categories? One is what we call Vijatiya Veda. What is Vijatiya? And you decide what is your group. Suppose, look at this. This is all teaching, right? So if I say that my group is human being, right? Then what? Elephant will become Vijati. Vijati because the elephant is not a human being. Suppose I change the group and I said mammals. Mammals is my group. Then this elephant will become a Sajati or Vijati. Animal, any animal which is a mammal will now become Sajati. So do you understand? So that means that is just a way of looking at it. And what is that? You assign a group, and this is what we do that, right? In mathematics, all of you have studied. You decide what is your set, right? Depending upon what that set is, there are subsets, and then there is something which doesn't belong to that set. So Vijati is, you decide what is that group. Suppose you say living beings, then what? Not only the humans and elephants are included, but also every living insect, bacteria, they'll all be included. Then what will become Vijati? Vijati will be anything which is not living being will become Vijati, right? So then the Sajatiya Veda. So that means there are differences between groups. Then within one group, there are differences. So you have created one group, which is, let's say, human beings, but each body is different. So within that Sajati, which is human beings, right, then each body is different. So that is called Sajatiya Veda, right? And then Swagata Bheda. What is Swagata Bheda? That one human being, which is one member of one group, also has what? If your own body can be seen as what? Liver, kidney, different parts, hands, legs. So that is what we call Swagata Bheda. So one entity itself has many different Vedas. Then between two entities belonging to the same group, there are differences. And between two objects belonging to two different groups, there are differences. And so what? From one Ishvara, all these Vedas come, right? And you don't need to collapse those Vedas. All we have to do is to understand the presence of that one intelligence, which is appearing as all these different things, which include Sajatiya, Vijatiya, and Swagata Bheda.
Thank you so much, Neema ji. Unfortunately, we're running out of time, so we have to put an end to this session. We've benefited a lot from this continuous teaching of Prashnottara Ratnamalike. Viewers, this text is available online, or you can just buy the book and read it further. And we've announced ma'am's email address and other thing, her blog. So if you want to attend any of her sessions, you can contact her and attend her classes.
Have you given my wisdom of?
Yes, we've announced that.
Okay, great.
So thank you so much, ma'am, and we look forward to seeing you in many more festivals and sessions of Advaita Academy. Viewers, we have more sessions lined up this weekend. In the evening, we have Professor V. Krishnamurthy talking to us about the innermost dialogue from God to man. So please do tune in at 7 p.m. India time. Thank you and goodbye.